Sanctuary. A world forged out of the eternal conflict, where angels of the high heavens and demons of the burning hells waged their ceaseless war. In its wake, from the embers of divine and demonic strife, arose humanity, forever touched by the forces, but never owned by any one side. Eons passed, humanity flourished. In time, they raised cities and settlements, building lives upon the land's bounty. Humanity lived in fragile peace, shaping their own fate. Until events happened and the unseen conflict spilled onto Sanctuary. Amidst the chaos, humanity clung to two forces: faith and fear. Faith in salvation from the high heavens, and fear of the eternal torment the burning hells would unleash. Caught between warring titans, they could only pray or perish. From faith, a religion was born, the Cathedral of Light. Led by Mother Brava, its doctrine was built upon prophecy. Salvation would come through a once fallen angel, Inarius. To the faithful, he was their guiding light. To others, a promise yet to be fulfilled. Other faiths arose, but none matched the might of the Cathedral of Light. Its influence spread across Sanctuary, followers growing in number with unwavering devotions. With every sermon and every conquest, their grip tightened, shaping the world in the name of their prophecy. In the face of demonic threats, warriors, monks, and humble peasants rose to form the Horadrim, an order sworn to defend Sanctuary from the horrors of the burning hells. Among them, one name would be etched into legend: Deckard Cain. Yet their cause was not born of men alone. It was the will of Tyrael, an angel of the high heavens who once cast aside immortality for the sake of humankind. For generations, the Horadrim stood as Sanctuary's vanguard, until Tyrael vanished without a word. With their guiding light gone, time wore them down. Mortality weakened their ranks, their purpose faded, and what was once a mighty order became a mere shadow of its former glory. Here begins the journey of a lone wanderer, a druid from the wild, untamed lands of Skosklen. Across the vast reaches of Sanctuary, he rode, oblivious to the role he would play in the unraveling of an age-old struggle. His path would soon intertwine with the very beings who shaped this world. This is the story of their downfall. With a storm gathering on the horizon, the wanderer pressed on unmounted, a lone torch flickering in his grasp. The promise of ale and warm hearth awaited in the next town's tavern, a fleeting comfort for weary bones. Night fell, quiet and ordinary, until he felt it. A presence, unseen yet heavy, eyes watching, stalking. The air grew thick. He was not alone. With the druid's sharpened senses, he felt no fear, only irritation. With one swift motion, he turned, listened, attuning himself to nature's whispers. But there was nothing. Only the rustling trees and the distant rumble of an approaching storm. Then, without warning, a sharp neigh cut through the silence as the noble beast bolted into the night, deaf to its master's call. The druid sprang into motion, chasing after his panicked steed with confusion flickering in his mind. What could have roused such terror in the beast? Until he finally catches up to it. But the sight before him was not what he had expected. The mighty stallion lay still upon the snow-covered ground, its lifeblood staining the white in deep crimson. Its belly had been torn open, entrails spilling across the frozen earth. A savage, merciless kill. Whatever did this was still out there, and now he would walk this path alone. He pressed forward, night rapidly approaching. The storm now heavier. With the elements now muddling his senses, he failed to sense the stalker again, silently drifting in the shadows. The storm unleashed its wrath, yet the wanderer pressed on, pushing through the biting cold with sheer will alone. No shelter, no respite, only the endless white. Then through the blinding snowfall, something took shape in the distance. A trick of the storm? A phantom of exhaustion? He narrowed his gaze, straining against the swirling frost. There, a cave. Torch in hand, he seeks the shelter that stood in front of him, disappointed in himself how he could have missed such detail. He was firmly convinced there was nothing there, but he's not one to question fate's offering, especially when death was the alternative. He settled in, making the most of the cave's shelter, warmth pushing back the deathly chill that clung to his bones. Exhaustion weighed heavy, and at last, he let himself rest. But as he did, he remained oblivious to the eyes that had followed him since nightfall, watching, waiting. The morning sun beckoned, thawing some of the previous snow torrent. The wanderer, now well rested, marches on and continues his journey to seek the nearest town. Beasts emerged, blocking his path, predators sensing easy prey in the open field. But the wanderer was no helpless traveler. He knew this land, knew these creatures, knew the taste of battle. He wielded more than steel. He wielded the fury of nature itself. A gifted druid, he called upon the storm, lightning crackling at his fingertips. Creatures that once saw an easy prey now became the hunted. And at last, he reached Nevesk, a town as worn and weary as the souls who called it home. Despite this, it was a welcome respite. A tavern, derelict homes, and in the middle, a cathedral of light chapel. The wanderer approaches the town when suddenly, he hears a scream of terror from one of the shanty houses. On instinct, his compassion for the suffering took hold. He quickly stormed the shanty house, kicking the door in. Inside, the scene unfolded in an instant. A man and a woman dragged the frail old man across the wooden floor. His worn, battered body trembled with fear, his cries laced with pure dread. He was not struggling to escape. He was pleading, begging. The wanderer's gaze locked onto the captors, his grip tightening on his weapon. "By the spirits, let him go at once!" the wanderer commanded. The fire within him burned. Justice was not a choice, it was instinct. The woman met his eyes with eerie uncertainty.
"It's not what it looks like,"
she said, her tone steady. She introduced herself as Vanny, and the man with him was Oswin. The old man with them was a priest. They were not doing any sort of harm, they were only calming him down. She'll explain more as she led the wanderer outside. Vanny explained. The priest recently arrived to town, raving about demons, horrors from the north. He screamed of doom, stirring panic among the villagers, frightening the children. They had no choice but to restrain him as he wouldn't stop. She suggested she'll explain better inside a warmer hearth. Vanny led the wanderer into the village tavern. Warmth, the prospect of cooked food, ale, and good company felt like a distant memory to him. But the welcome was anything but warm. Villagers eyed him warily, their gazes heavy with unease. Vanny guided the wanderer to the tavern's bar. She continued to explain the situation with the priest. There have been sightings, demons in the ice howl ruins to the north. But they were simple folk. No one dares to go near that place. Those who have, they never return the same. The priest was not the first. Vanny pleaded the wanderer for protection. They have nowhere else to turn. This is an affront to nature, replied the wanderer. I will deal with it at once. And so, the wanderer went forth and sought Icehowl ruins. As he neared the ancient ruins, from the shadows they came, the fallen, twisted spawns of the burning hells. They swarmed like rabid beasts. But the druid wanderer called upon the spirits, and the earth answered. Creeping vines burst forth, writhing like living serpents, entangling the shrieking demons, tightening, choking, killing. The wanderer pressed on, his path littered with the twisted remains of the fallen. Then at last, he arrived. Icehowl ruins. The air was heavy, thick with decay, and something worse. His presence did not go unnoticed. He battles through with primal strength, undead skeletons that bar his way. Once noble warriors, now nothing more than hollowed remains twisted by dark necromancy. Summoned from the spectral plane, he calls forth his dire wolves, a druid's gift from the spirits. They lunge at the creatures who dared block his path. Caught off guard in how they mistakenly underestimated him, they scattered for safety. The wanderer arrives in an open chamber. This area was different. Rune circles were etched on the floor, candles previously burned. At the center, a decapitated priest of the Cathedral of Light kneels lifeless, his head laid on the floor, face revealing torture and agony before life ebbed away. The wanderer stepped forward, eyes fixed on the lifeless priest sprawled before him. But before he could get closer, the ground trembled, debris raining down. A deep, guttural growl rumbled through the ruins, followed by a violent crash. The priest's remains were obliterated beneath its weight. A hulking form loomed in the dust and dim torchlight. The demon lord Exfal. For ages, it had ruled these ruins, feeding on the flesh of those foolish enough to wander too close. And now, a lone druid stood before it, a trespasser. Exfal's burning eyes locked onto him, seething with fury. Exfal charged at the wanderer with its massive weapon. The sheer size and strength of the demon dwarfed the lone wanderer. Ancient beast fueled by raw hatred, far deadlier than any foe he had faced. He stayed on the defensive. Exfal was strong, but strength alone would not decide this battle. He backs away. On command, his dire wolves lunged with deadly agility. X-File roared as the wolves sank their teeth deep into its cursed flesh. The demon swung wildly. Confusion flickered in its burning eyes. This was not the fight it expected. And that was all the Wanderer needed. Seizing the opening, he called down lightning. A blinding bolt cracked down on X-File with elemental force. Energy coursed through the demon's monstrous frame. It staggered. The unbreakable, the unstoppable, weakened. The Wanderer's eyes locked onto his faltering foe. This was his moment. He moved, swings his double axe at the demon lord, aiming for the killing blow, severing X-File's horned head from his massive body. Still a hint of disbelief in its eyes, demon blood splattered the walls. A pool of crimson spread beneath X-File's lifeless corpse, its monstrous form now nothing more than a ruin of flesh and bone. The battle was over. Icehowl Ruins was liberated. The Wanderer takes X-File's head and turned toward the village with haste. The tavern doors burst open. He stepped inside. In his grasp, X-File's severed head. He raised it high with a silent declaration of victory. The villagers erupted in cheers. Their fear lifted at last. The danger that had loomed over Nevesk for so long had finally been cast off. Vanny approached the Wanderer. They may not have enough gold to reward him, but they have food, ale, and good company to provide. A simple feast was held for the Wanderer, celebrating his victory. The villagers joined and all shared the jubilation of the night. There was music, dancing, and lively chatter from everyone. All eyes were on the Wanderer. They hailed him. The Wanderer felt pride in what he had accomplished. He welcomed the rewards. The feast carried on deep into the night. The Wanderer drank, ate, and reveled, savoring every bite, every drop of ale. But then, something felt off. A creeping drowsiness washed over him. He tried to steady himself, but his body was no longer his own. His eyelids grew heavy, his head dipped forward, and before he could fight it, darkness took him. Sprawled over the table, the Wanderer remained motionless in a deep sleep, oblivious of what just transpired. Vanny signals for the music to stop, and everybody in unison changed their demeanor. An evil, ecstatic grin spreads across each one's face. The back door opens, and Oswin arrives with a wooden cart. The Wanderer was hoisted onto it. Vanny stood nearby, watching. A slow, satisfied smile curled on her lips. The fool had played his part well. He had done exactly what they needed. Cleared the ruins, removed the obstacle. And now, he would be their offering. The mother would be pleased. Through the biting cold, Oswin trudged forward, gripping the cart's worn handles as he dragged the unconscious Wanderer toward a derelict barn. Its wood rotting, its structure barely standing, abandoned to most, but not to them. Inside, the stench of death was suffocating. The barn was no mere shelter. It was a slaughterhouse. Corpses hung from rusted hooks, their flesh stripped and torn. Some drained of blood, others still fresh, bright crimson pooling beneath them. Oswin barely spared a glance at the grotesque display as he wheeled the Wanderer deeper inside. He reached into his pocket, pulling out something strange. Blood petals. They pulsed faintly, carrying the will of something far greater. He shoved them into the wanderer's mouth. The brittle petals cracked into dissolving warmth that seeped down his throat. A sudden flash of vision reverberates into the wanderer's consciousness, but drifts back into the abyss once more. Oswin's grin widened. Knives in hand, this was no mere offering. This was a glorious sacrifice. A tribute that would secure their blessings. More wealth, more power, more favor from the Blessed Mother. But unbeknownst to him, a lone figure peered inside. The figure moved silently. He crept through the barn, closing the distance between himself and Oswin. In his hand, a crude spiked bludgeon. Oswin, consumed by the ritual and madness, never noticed. The intruder came closer. Then in a single heartbeat, he swings, striking the unwitting Oswin, his face caving in under the sheer force of the blow. Blood sprayed as he was rendered lifeless right there and then. The lone figure wasted no time. He rushed to the wanderer's side, gripping his shoulders, waking him. The wanderer stirred, his body still racked with the effects of the feast. He barely registered the hands pulling him upright. Then, through the haze, he recognized the man. The demented priest. The same one Vanny and Oswin had restrained in the shack. He asks for answers, but abruptly stopped. The villagers were coming, and this time, they weren't celebrating. Beyond the barn's entrance, the villagers closed in, their faces twisted in fury. No longer the joyous, grateful people from the tavern. These were zealots. They were ready to finish what Oswin had started. Their sacrifice had been stolen from them. Their promised offering to the Blessed Mother was still breathing. The night was far from over. The wanderer and the priest braced for a massacre.